Homer led the league in tackles with 85. The deep ball for Darius Prince, and Philadelphia's on the board first.
On the draw, this is Bryson Allen. And Allen weaving his way all the way down to the 22.
10-yard line, 5. Mayfield, Dancy, all around. Throw as far as he can throw it. Jump ball coming. Crazy stuff. Not this time.
And you want to be a wide receiver. You're going to have to take a little bit of a hit like that as Brown got him in that shoulder, but watch. Those are teeth.
Do we have a dentist on staff here?
We're back for another episode of Around the Indoor Football World. It's been about a month since we last saw you guys talking indoor football, but there's so much to talk about we couldn't wait any longer. So without further ado, I'm joined by my two trusty co-hosts. We got Cody Bryant, aka Ron Burgundy, on my left, camera left, I think. And then we got TJ Bartholomew on the right there. How are you guys doing so far this morning?
Good. How are you?
Definitely cannot complain so far on this Saturday morning. Nice and early, so nothing's quite ruined my day yet. Although, Cody, something may have already ruined your day like you were telling us off camera.
I mean, who schedules baseball on a college football Saturday?
Like you said, everybody's got to be planning around you for the future when it comes to the scheduling.
They have to. See, as a Nebraska fan, they're scheduling the Royals game today at roughly the same time Nebraska plays, so I have to double screen that. And then Monday night, it's Chiefs and who the Chiefs play? Saints. And then at the same time, it's Royals and Yankees again. So it's like I got to double screen both of those. So it's it's cool to watch both games at once. Like, come on now, let me spread it out a little bit.
That's definitely fair. Messing around with the camera lineup here. There's so much to talk about since last time we've been on right now that I'm not even really quite sure where to start other than the fact that we're going to start on the IFL. So let me pull up my notes because I've been taking notes for the past month trying to figure out what we were going to talk about today. And we got flooded with information for the past month, so we'll go ahead and just jump right into this. I guess the first course of action or the first big piece of news that we could go after, and I think you guys could kind of weigh in on this, but let's talk about the Ron James hiring for Northern Arizona. Let's start with Cody on this one. Obviously, NAZ getting rid of Les Moss, or not getting rid of, but Les Moss telling NAZ that he was moving on, as well as Rod Windsor was moving on to Bay Area, left an opening there for the Wranglers. So they went out and got an AFL legend, a guy who coached in the AFL for like over 2 decades, and collected a pretty solid win record. So what are your thoughts on this hire?
I don't mind it. I don't know if it's going to lead to success, but I don't mind it. You see what Northern Arizona did with the hiring of Les Moss, who former Jacksonville head coach, so he has arena football experience. And then now you hire Ron James, who also has former arena football experience. So they're kind of going with that veteran talent of coaching. And then I'm sure we'll talk about the coordinators here and stuff in a second, but to kind of build around just more of a veteran coaching leadership, it's going to be good. We'll see what players they end up signing to complement the coaching staff. But as of right now, I don't mind the hire. To me, it's not necessarily a huge splash, but they obviously could have done much worse.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of came out of left field. I was not expecting Ron James to be one of the candidates, but I heard afterward that after he was hired that he had been with the, all the indoor football league teams for the championship in Vegas and had been kind of, working the phones, so to speak, to get his next job. And I guess he determined it was going to be with the IFL instead of the AF1 or AFL for the 2025 season, which I thought was interesting as well. TJ, what are your thoughts on this one?
I like it. Like Cody said, it pretty much mimics what they did with Les Moss, former AFL, basically Hall of Fame coach. And how do you replace Les Moss, a legendary head coach? You replace him with another legendary AFL head coach in Ron James. He's already been named Coach of the Year twice in the AFL. And actually looking up some random stuff about him last night to refresh my memory of him, I actually stumbled upon two very interesting tidbits about his career. He actually holds AFL records, one with the Pittsburgh Power, the best overall turnaround from one season to another in terms of winning percentage. And then with Tampa Bay, the only head coach to turn around a 2-win team from the previous year and get them to the Arena Bowl the following year. So, I mean, I understand the jump from the AFL to the IFL. It's a real thing. Some people deny it, but it really is a different style of football. But I really like the hire. He's not only a great coach, but he's also a great coach at turning a bad situation to a good one. And in my opinion, NAZ is already in a good situation. So he's just going to help make the team even better.
Absolutely. And then he brings with him, hopefully I pronounced his first name correctly, but C.A. Burley. Hopefully I said that correctly. But Burley comes over from most recently the Arizona Rattlers. He was their quarterback coach a couple seasons ago and assistant head coach. Two-time champion in the NAL as a head coach. So a great guy to bring in and ultimately have as your kind of offensive coordinator to lean on. He knows the game a little bit. He was actually a guy I thought might be looked at as the head coach, but ultimately he ends up there as the offensive coordinator. And then they also hired Quad City's defensive coordinator, but his name is slipping my mind right now.
Larry Hendricks.
Thank you, Larry Hendricks. What are your thoughts on Larry Hendricks jumping over from Quad City, Cody?
Like I said, it's an experienced coaching staff. One quick correction: I believe it's Sia Burley, if I'm not mistaken. At least that's how I always remember it from the broadcast whenever they were on NFL Network. But like I said, it's just a seasoned coaching staff. We talk a lot of experience. You could probably look it up how many quote years of coaching experience every coordinator has. It's a lot. And when you consider what Northern Arizona is going through in the Western Conference with the amount of coaches and the coaching pedigrees that they have over there, it's a gauntlet. And Northern Arizona doesn't want to fall behind when it comes to that. You look at championship caliber Arizona, Bay Area, San Diego made the playoffs. Vegas is no slouch. They were the last undefeated team last year. So Northern Arizona is going to try and get a coaching staff of a lot of veteran talent in hopes of hopefully getting the players to get developed and make a run at the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I was kind of, like I said, I was thrown for a loop when they hired James. I wasn't sure how they would go about hiring a staff around him, but I like how he's done it. You don't know what you don't know, and that's a phrase I'm stealing from a couple coaches that I talked to, but it's something that's very intelligent to be aware of what you're not aware of, so to speak, right? So if you're a former AFL head coach and you're coming into the IFL for the first time, it makes a lot of sense to hire two experienced IFL coaches who at least know the rules and can walk in day one and start moving rather than having to, learn a bunch of things that they're not aware of already. So I think that's a great hire on both sides for the offensive and defensive coordinator positions. And I think it's going to benefit the team in that transition for Coach James, who, again, has primarily coached arena rule football, which is completely different. But excuse me, one of the other dominoes that fell in this whole situation was the fact that Les Moss decided to leave and go to Bay Area He brought with him Rod Windsor as well. They're kind of getting the boys back together out there in Bay Area. The guys who won the 2022 championship with NAZ a couple years ago. So let's go ahead and get your thoughts on this one. Let's go to TJ first on this one.
It's another signing that it's a group of signings, I should say, by Bay Area that I like. They're stacking it. They're bringing a lot of championship experience. They're bringing, people who, specifically in the IFL have won, just as like you just said a few years ago with Northern Arizona. So I think it's a great signing. Rod Windsor as well, experienced AFL wide receiver, has spent some time on the Rattlers and Nazareth, Arizona coaching staff in the IFL, so he has specific IFL experience as well. I have a feeling the IFL is going to be very top heavy this year.
You have a good point. This is definitely a great staff, and it's another staff that Bay Area has built that looks like the best on paper in the league. So, Cody, what are your thoughts on this group coming back together in Bay Area?
It shows that Bay Area is in it for the long haul. It shows that they want to win another championship. They got the number 1 seed last season. And I think they didn't like that Arizona won the championship. I don't think that they like that San Diego beat them last year, so they're going to buff up their coaching staff. We're going to talk player signings in a little bit, but they are in it for the long haul. And when you thought this team just a couple years ago at 1-15, if they were going to survive or anything like that, I think that this team, like I said, I think they're in it for the long haul. They are going to try and be a force in the West, and I don't doubt them for kind of doing what Northern Arizona is doing, getting a lot of veteran talent, getting players to develop, and hopefully lifting another trophy.
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the reasons we see Coach Moss move on from NAZ. Traditionally, it seems like they've had a lot of rookies, which in my mind always kind of speaks to the fact that maybe there's a little bit less under the table money there in NAZ than there is on other spots. But Moss always did a great job of developing those rookies. So we'll see if they can manage to do the same thing with Coach James, or if they kind of change up their whole approach. Chad Rowland says Bay Area has done a great job so far. And then who do you guys think is the most underrated coach in the IFL? C-Dog, we will definitely get back to that question here in a bit. We got a little bit more to talk about before we get to that. The next subject at hand is actually the Fisher's Freight coaching staff, which has essentially been finished at this point. We all knew about Dixie Wooten coming in as the head coach, which we discussed in the past. But now he's hired his son, Dixie Wooten III, as the offensive coordinator. He's got Chuck Miller there as the defensive coordinator. And then what I found as a little bit of a surprise, and I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on this in particular, and then the whole staff as a whole. Matt Elam retires. After just playing in the championship game with Massachusetts, he has opted to retire and ultimately go into coaching, where he's going to be the special teams coach and defensive backs coach for Fisher's Freight in their first season. So what are your guys' thoughts on Matt Elam retiring and then this whole staff? Let's go to Cody first.
I like it. It's excuse me, someone that was my goodness, excuse me. It was someone that's been in the game very recently, as in they know the ins and outs. Now, it's no knock on anyone that's been a veteran of the game. They are seasoned, so I'm sure Matt Elam will take his lumps when it comes to coaching if there's stuff that he gets out coached by being a new one. But someone that was literally a defensive back last season, knows the intricacies, knows the ins and outs just as of last season. I think it's a very, very good hire. Adding on to that, the special teams coordinator, I'm sure he was right around Massachusetts when it came to Jimmy Robinson returning kicks. I think he was on kick coverage, kicking returns and kickoffs, if I'm not mistaken. I have to look at all the games. So I really, really like the hire. For the other ones too, Chuck Miller, Dixie Wooten, I think those are, Dixie Wooten III was probably a given. Chuck Miller looks like a good hire as well. We'll see. I'm really, really optimistic about Fishers and their coaching staff.
I am as well. I think it's a great staff, and I really like the Elam hiring. TJ, what are your thoughts on this one?
I like it as well. It's really shown that Fisher Freight they're stacking up for this inaugural season. Dixie Wooten III, again followed his dad over from Bay Area. Chuck Miller. I mean, he's been he was with the Green Bay Blizzard, then with the Iowa Barnstormers. In 2019, they actually led the league with him as defensive coordinator with 22 picks. So I mean, it's another group of signings with a lot of comfortability, if you will, with it. Just like the other two teams that we discussed already. And Matt Elam, obviously having experience both in the IFL and originally in the NFL, you're just bringing a lot of good experience and a lot of coaches and players that already know each other to what's looking like a really good situation, even in their inaugural season.
Absolutely. And I kind of on the surface didn't immediately recall why and how Matt Elam and Dixie Wooten knew each other, but Elam actually played for Dixie Wooten at one point in Tucson, I believe. So I wasn't actually aware of that prior to doing the show. I kind of did a little bit of research on that, and it's awesome to see these guys coming back together and Elam being able to start his professional coaching career. It looks like he does a lot of youth coaching and stuff like that in his own time. I've kind of just followed him on social media, and you see a lot of pictures of stuff like that. So always really cool to see. I think he's obviously been a veteran of the game. I think he's been around a little over a decade. He's played in, the NFL, the XFL, the IFL. He's played over in the CFL. So he's got a lot of experience he can kind of impart on the next generation of players in the IFL. And then, as Cody mentioned, he's played a lot of special teams too. So I think this hire makes a lot of sense. To me, the Dixie Wooten III hire as the offensive coordinator was definitely something that I kind of had mentioned before. I was wondering if he would follow him over there. He gets his first offensive coordinator position. He's been an offensive line coach for 2 years now, I think. He only graduated college in 2022. 2022. So he's been around the IFL for 2 seasons now. Former offensive lineman at Houston. So, I mean, definitely going to be interesting to see if it's him calling plays, if it's his father calling plays, and he's just kind of coordinator by title, or how that all works. But his star is rising incredibly fast in the NFL or the IFL, and it'll be interesting to see, if we hear his name talked about as a future head coach coming up here soon. Couple other things to cover on the coaching front. Actually, maybe we got through all of them. Other than the fact that Quad City still has an opening, I think we got all the coaching staff moves. I apologize. I was thinking there was one more team that had hired a coach. But we're going to go ahead and look at some of these free agency signings. And I think the biggest news as of late is probably Drew Powell signing with Arizona once again. I say that because that immediately opens up questions about Dalton Sneed. And he just won back-to-back championships in the IFL with 2 different teams. So, I mean, let's kind of get your guys' thoughts on this one. How does Drew Powell affect Arizona? Does he make them better? Let's go to Cody first.
So here's the question. If you're Dalton Sneed, what are you thinking? You win a championship with Bay Area, and you go to Arizona. You win a championship with Arizona, and they sign Drew Powell. Like, whoever gets Dalton Sneed next is probably going to win a championship. I'm kidding, but I don't know. I don't know if it was something where maybe Dalton Sneed wanted more money. Maybe he's done playing. I'm not one to speculate. We don't know. But for the amount of people that were, Rattlers fans that were commenting, going like, "I'm glad he's gone. He's a choke artist. Drew Powell, this and that." Well, you got him back, so you might want to delete those posts. So I don't know. I like it, but it's also the question mark. You wanted to move. Excuse me. You wanted to move on with him. You signed Dalton Sneed. You won a championship. Do you think that you can get back over the hump with him, with Drew Powell, re-signing him? And that's no knock on Powell. He has a lot of success. He's, what, 2 or 3-time MVP in the league. He's done a lot of good for Arizona, a lot of great wins. He also does get injured a little bit, but that's every quarterback gets injured in this league. So can you mitigate that? I'm more curious to see who Arizona signs as a backup to Drew Powell. Not to say that Powell is destined for injury, but they went through 3 quarterbacks last year with Snead, Kettle, and Lorenzo Brown. So quarterback depth is important in this league. We'll see what they do. I am curious to see what Arizona's playing.
Yeah, that's probably the most interesting domino, in my personal opinion, to fall so far. And because of Dalton Snead, in my opinion, is probably the best IFL quarterback outside of maybe Sam Castronova last year. But it sounds like Sam Castronova is also looking for new pastures. So we'll get to that here in a moment. TJ, what are your thoughts on Drew Powell back in the IFL after one season in the AFL?
I think the overall debacle, unfortunately, that happened last year probably played a role in it. He probably wanted more stability, a better league, essentially in his mind. Now it does seem, the former AFL, now AF1, is looking to be in better pastures right now. But it did kind of surprise me because, like we mentioned, Snead did a great job. I really didn't see that move coming. I saw rumors that, Powell was looking to get back into the IFL or at least leave the Predators. But, it definitely surprised me, especially with the way, obviously, last season went for Arizona. I mean, how can you complain? But, maybe the injuries from last season at quarterback did play a real role in wanting to get Powell back. Maybe they're going to even run some kind of maybe make a little bit of a college system with a dual quarterback threat. Who knows? But, I'm interested to see what Kevin Guy has up his sleeve for this.
Absolutely. It just seems odd. Like Cody said, you have a quarterback who's won the back-to-back IFL championships, and in 2 seasons or 3 seasons in a row now, he'll be searching for a new team. So is there something a little bit behind the scenes going on there? Is he tough to deal with in terms of his demands? I personally think that if you're going to compete for a championship every year that he's your quarterback, I'd probably go ahead and deal with some of that stuff. But, that's just me. I like to win. So it'll be interesting to see if, Drew Powell comes in and just picks up where he left off and starts playing well again. But it definitely opened up some questions for me. And then moving on to the next move that really kind of opened up some questions for me that I prefaced just a moment ago. But Guy Myers, formerly of the Carolina Cobras, was the backup to Malik Henry a couple seasons ago and then was the starter last season. He signs with San Antonio, reunites with his former head coach and James Fuller, who's current offensive coordinator there in San Antonio. And in the midst of that, it sounds like Sam Castronova could be out. So we have another situation where, you get a veteran indoor football quarterback in, but you're also losing possibly the best quarterback in the league. So what are you guys' thoughts on this one? Let's go to TJ first.
It was I'm not going to say it was a surprise. When it happened, I was kind of like, oh, okay, that's a really good move. That was my thought. He has a lot of experience. He's been around, multiple leagues for a while. So, I think it's another great signing, and I'm interested to see what he does. Unfortunately, I don't know too much about the signing, though. I'm going to be honest with you.
You're all good. He's kind of bounced back and forth between the USFL, was with the Memphis Showboats, and then I think the Tampa Bay Bandits before that. So quality quarterback, big guy. I want to say he's like 6'5", 230, 220, somewhere in that range. Definite gunslinger, can run a little bit. Incredibly nice guy. I can speak on that, firsthand. I've dealt with him a lot because of the Cobra show we do. I think he's probably one of the most humble guys I've ever met in any sort of football setting. So for whatever that's worth, I think he's a great leader. Guys love to play with him. So I'm extremely excited to see him get an opportunity in the IFL. And I'm extremely excited to see what James Fuller cooks up in 2024 or 2025. I apologize. Because his offense was lighting it up this year. So it'll be interesting to see. Cody, what are your thoughts on Guy Myers back and then Sam Castronova potentially being gone?
It shows that the San Antonio wants to kind of do a different offense. Whether or not it was Sam's ordeal to leave or go somewhere else or not get re-signed, or if that was the coaching staff or whatever, we'll probably never know. But Guy Myers is on the same team as his brother DJ Myers. You're gonna have a brother-to-brother connection if he starts. I like the hire. I heard not the hire. I like the signing, just for the sheer fact that you're getting rid of, I wouldn't say one of the best quarterbacks, but one of the best seasons we have seen from Sam Castronova to now Myers. So it's like Chad just said, he's got some big shoes to fill. On the flip side, though, is it shoes to fill if you're going to come in with your own style? What he did at Carolina, what he's done making his name known in the USFL. He's his own guy, no pun intended. But it's going to come down to, again, development, the offensive scheme. Are they going to do anything differently? Running ability. Is he going to be more of a dual threat guy, being able to run? What do they do? San Antonio has practically resigned their entire offense so far, except for quarterback. So we'll see what happens if they change anything up or what route they decide to go with. But I do like the signing. I think it's going to be a fun time in San Antonio.
Yeah, I'm a fan of it. Like I said, the immediate questions that I had about it were, where's Sam Castronova going to be? Kind of rumors that he wants to get closer to home, doesn't want to be away so long. I think he's a New York guy. So immediately speculation would turn to Albany. Does he return back to Albany? Does Medlock retire? There's going to be a lot of questions about where he ends up or if this is the end of the road for him. He's been one of the best quarterbacks in any indoor football league that he's been a part of, for the better part of 4 or 5 seasons now. So, you got to wonder if it's just time for him to move on. Another big piece of information that came out this year, and it was kind of, it was one that I didn't see coming, but it was one that immediately made sense once we saw it. And that's Josh Jones following his offensive coordinator and former head coach to Bay Area. That does further open up extra questions. It's amazing how this works, but where does Daquan Neal go now? So it's like for every door that closes, another door opens for these quarterbacks. So now we get to talk about another 2 quarterbacks. TJ, what do you think about Josh Jones following his coaching staff to Bay Area? And then what does this mean for Daquan Neal?
I like it. It's basically, I mean, obviously he's changing teams, but for him, it's going to be a mostly seamless transition, obviously following his OC and former head coach. I think it's definitely going to help them out. As for Neal, I don't really know. Maybe he could look at maybe the AF1. I don't know if he would be open to being a backup anywhere, because he's played pretty solid. So, it's kind of like what you said, it's just interesting how every single move just directly affects somebody else in this league so far this offseason. But I do know that, Moss and Rod Windsor, they did want Jones to follow them and they got it. So now we're going to have to see what happens with Neal.
Absolutely. And, more proof there might be a little extra under the table money there in Bay Area. They're able to lure over the offensive rookie of the year. Cody, what are your thoughts on this one? And then do you have any idea where we can possibly see Neal end up?
Yeah, I like the signing. What you saw with Daquan Neal and Felix Harper in Bay Area last season with the dual threats. It's going to hopefully, depending on the signings, because again, we're right in the midst of it. If Bay Area is able to get another good running back like Shane Simpson or anything like that, that can actually help alleviate some of the running that Josh Jones has to do. He was the true dual threat. I believe he was the leading rusher for Northern Arizona because they didn't really use a running back last year. Will they go that same route with Bay Area? I don't know. So it's a really good signing just on the sheer fact that if you get a good running back at Bay Area or re-sign Shane Simpson or I can't remember the other guy's name, Stratford or something. If you can use that route and actually have a good running game, a 1-2 punch like that, it should hopefully help Josh Jones. For Daquan Neal, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it's like he's going to Fishers. It's like the worst kept secret, it seems, but we still don't know. That's the thing. Until the ink is on the paper, we don't know. Now, again, that's the same thing with someone like Sam Castronova or Dalton Sneed. Are these guys done? Are they looking for a better opportunity, whether the UFL, AF1, NAL, whatever? We just don't know. So, for all intents and purposes, like I said, you'd love to think that Daquan Neal is going to follow Dixie Wooten and Dixie Wooten III over to Fishers. I mean, Daquan Neal did play for Iowa, so he kind of knows that area a little bit. But we just don't know. But that's where most people's brains would probably go to is like, oh, well, if this quarterback and OC are going over here and this quarterback and OC are going over there, the dominoes kind of fall in that direction.
That's my immediate thought as well. I'm fairly certain that if Daquan Neal's playing in the IFL in 2025, it's going to be with Dixie Wooten. I think that'd be their fourth different team together, if I'm not mistaken, having played with Iowa, Tucson, and Bay Area already previously under Dixie Wooten. So it just makes a lot of sense. I think that's one of the only coaches he's played for in the IFL. So why not continue what's working? And then the next pieces of quarterback news is, of course, a trio of veterans re-signing with their teams. Nate Davis inks a contract with San Diego to return. Jerome Johnson's returning to Vegas, and Caleb Barker's returning to Jacksonville. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts real quick on this one. I know there's not really much to say. Of these three re-signings, who's the most surprising to you? Let's go to Cody first.
It's the same that I said in one of my off-season recaps, which shameless plug, go check out my YouTube channel in the alley. Father Time is undefeated, but he's never met Nate Davis. That is the most surprising one to me because I didn't know if he'd be done. Jerome Johnson coming back from an MVP season, you could maybe make the case that he could showcase himself to the UFL, CFL, things like that. Caleb Barker just got going second half of the season for Jacksonville. So him re-signing with the Sharks, perfectly fine. It's Nate Davis. The dude's, 40 years old or somewhere close to it, or maybe over. I don't know how many years he has left in the tank, but as long as he's putting on those shoes and getting out there on the field, I mean, every year is pretty shocking to me. So.
Completely fair. He is definitely getting up there. I want to say he's 38, but I'm going to go ahead and fact check that before I say that. TJ, what are your thoughts on this one? And did any of these surprise you?
Yeah, I'm with Cody. Nate Davis surprised me just because, again, he's been around forever since 2009, I believe. So that's a really long time to be in football, especially a tough game like indoor football. So, that one really surprised me. The other two didn't, really surprise me too much. I was extremely hopeful that Jerome Johnson would come back as a Vegas fan. So I was more or less happy about that, not really surprised. But it would definitely be Nate Davis just because, again, his age.
I would definitely agree with that. I was a little surprised Caleb Barker re-signed too, only because of the fact that I wasn't really sure if he was ever going to come back. I briefly had conversations with him, and I didn't think he was going to play again. Comes back last season, tail end of the year, plays pretty well, and decides to return for his third season in the IFL. But another sign that maybe NAZ didn't have money to pay some of these guys. Barker won a championship in 2022 and then kind of rode off into the sunset and didn't sign with anybody until the tail end of 2024. I know he had some family obligations in there as well, but definitely interesting. And then Nate Davis, I feel like this is, I want to say his last season, but we don't know. It could be, another 2-3 years before he decides to retire. I think what he's got going on down there in San Diego works for him perfectly. He's very involved in the offensive game planning and the way they call plays. So one thing that I think is such a good good relationship for them is, Nate Davis is essentially a coach on the field for Jen Hauser. So I think that's a move that you make if you can continue to talk him into playing. And then he's got a long, long future ahead of him as a coach if he wants it. I fully anticipate that when he does retire, we're going to hear, a subsequent announcement very quickly after that he's joining a coaching staff in the IFL or somewhere else. He's just, there's been a couple years in his career where he's basically served as the offensive coordinator for teams with Duke City when he was injured in 2021. So, I mean, why not, right? So eventually I think that's what we'll see him doing, but it looks like it's still going to be, in 2026 or beyond. Sea-Dog says, I'm not surprised because Taylor Genuizer is my uncle and I had a feeling. Before Wooten was hired, I was hoping somehow Davis came back to Indiana and played on Fishers. That would be interesting for sure. And he was going to get re-signed from the beginning. It'll be interesting, like I said, to see what he does after his career, but it looks like we got a couple more years or at least one more year before we figure that out. Let's get back to this question before we move on from the IFL, and that is, who do you think is the most underrated coach in the IFL? Who wants to go first on this one?
I think I've got my mind made up.
All right, who's that?
I'm going to go out on a limb and go for the team I root for with Quad City. I'm going to go with Corey Ross just for the sheer fact that when you look at the Western Conference teams and their coaching staffs, whether it's Tom Munoz or Kevin Guy, Rob Keefe, they all have championships under their belt in either this league or other leagues or stuff like that. Corey Ross and what he's been able to do with the resources available to him in Quad City in the last 3 seasons to make the playoffs, the players that he has brought in or the players that have left, got to a championship game. It's a weaker Eastern Conference, but at the same time, to do what you're doing in Quad City and continually make the playoffs, I think that goes very unnoticed. I mean, I don't think he gets the recognition that he possibly deserves. Corey Roberson could be up there too. But with all of the coaching in the West, it takes all of the air out of the balloon for like the East. So I got to give props over there. I'd also kind of give a shout out to Marvin Jones down in Tulsa just for his whole body of work, not just the stuff he's done in the IFL, but whole body of work with what he did in Omaha. And I cannot remember where else he was out off the top of my head, but that would probably be my pick overall, would be Corey Ross, just based on the last couple of seasons.
Completely fair. I like that pick. TJ, who's your pick? You're muted, buddy.
I would have to stay a homer as well, stick with Vegas and go Curtis Chin, just because of how he's helped turn Vegas around, especially this past season. A first playoff appearance, everything else. I was actually kind of surprised he didn't get more interest this past offseason, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I personally think he was the hottest coaching candidate on the market, and for him to not be a head coach in 2025, I'm a little shocked, to be honest. But when it comes to most underrated coaches, to me, that's a really tough question. But I would say Jason Gibson currently out there in Jacksonville. I think after we see how his first year went, a lot of people are probably sleeping on what he's going to be able to do in 2025. But I would caution anybody who thinks that they can write off the Sharks, especially with Caleb Barker there. I think Gibson's a great coach, and he was the guy that just needed some time to adapt to the IFL rule set. He's longtime NAL coach, so now that he's kind of adapted, I think that he's going to surprise a lot of people in 2025, especially given the fact that he gets to play in the East. So it's definitely a winning combination, if you ask me. Obviously, the West was extremely tough this past season, so I think there's a little bit more of an opening to see a team that was not in the playoffs this past season make it in 2025. TJ, correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually have to get out of here at this point?
Yes.
Definitely.
I was just messaging you in the chat about it.
For sure. Well, I really appreciate you giving us your time this morning, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, man. Any final thoughts before you get out of here?
Just it's been a crazy free agency, and it's making me excited for arena football and indoor football to come back. Although it's not completely gone because we do have a couple fall seasons going on. So
absolutely, and we will talk about that more in a little bit. TJ, have a great rest of your day, man. We'll catch you in the next episode.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. See you later.
Absolutely. So there's a couple more topics at hand, and feel free to pass on any of these questions I might ask you, given that this is mostly NAL and TAL stuff at this point, or AF1 stuff at this point. But moving on, we have news that Beaumont is finally official, and they announced their head coach, which I have to look up at the moment because I did not write that down in my notes. What are your thoughts on Beaumont finally having an official NAL team?
I'm curious to see how the NAL goes about it. You're going to question whether or not they expanded too quickly. You're going to question whether or not the vetting process is there. But I know I've said in previous episodes that I like the way that the NAL is kind of going about this. They are expanding, which is good. To the credit of the teams, that's one thing. But we will see. It's going to hopefully help some travel for some teams, and you're not dealing with. You might still deal with the Carolina to Idaho travel, but at the same time, getting some of those teams in Texas to alleviate some of the travel for Omaha, Sioux City, Idaho, Colorado, it's good. And correct me if I'm wrong, but was Jacoby Jones the one that passed away who was the head coach? Yeah. So,
yes, sir.
Yeah, trying to fill those shoes. It's going to be with a heavy heart for the entire season for Beaumont, I'm sure, when it comes to 2025. So I did see last night off the wall, shout out to him. He's got really good coverage. They did sign Jefferson Fritz, who is a former defensive back from the Iowa Barnstormers last year. So that I don't know if that's their first signing, but that's a really good signing for Beaumont as well.
Definitely not the first signing. They got is it Jonathan Griggs that was with Massachusetts?
Is that JD Griggs? He was a
Griggs. There you go.
Former Frisco player as well.
Yeah, and then they also got Daquan Patten, former New England Patriot, played in the AFL last year. Who else? There's been a couple signings out there. They've got a pretty solid squad. Delvin Isidore is their quarterback. Every move that I've seen, it's been surprising. They've been getting some decent sized names. Jake Oliphant also signed. So it looks like they got some pieces down there in Beaumont. I'm definitely curious to see exactly what they do moving forward. Tyrone Washington tuning in the chat. We really appreciate that. Tuning in late from the post office, but always look forward to the show on Saturdays. Thank you, Wookie. We really appreciate that. It's because of you guys that we're here talking indoor football, normally every Saturday. Moving on to a little bit more news. We got Zach Brown, former Carolina Cobra. He was with the Gunslingers, I think, in 2025 or 2024. Will be with the Columbus Lions in 2025, a team I don't believe he's played with in the past. What are your thoughts about Zach Brown jumping into the IFL and then immediately realizing, hey, this isn't for me, and jumping back out?
I don't think he might have played a game or two with San Antonio. I don't know if he actually took snaps. I'd have to go back and look, but anytime I was doing my preseason previews or stuff like that, when it came to Jacksonville or San Antonio, and you go on the NAL website and look up, player awards or stats or anything, it's like Zach Brown was just peppered all over, whether Player of the Week honors or postseason honors, whatever the case could be. So I think it's a pretty good signing. NAL's not doing Iron Man, are they? Did they get rid of that, or is that just kind of a choice?
No, it's gone at this point. It's almost like a hybrid of arena rules and indoor rules in the way that they play. But it's more indoor style at this point.
So with that, I don't know if he's more linebacker or fullback, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see what he plays. But either side of the ball, he's good. So I don't mind it. Columbus showing that, hey, we're going to go from, was it the AIF back to the NAL? So signings like that only prove that Columbus is in it to win it.
I completely agree, and that's one of the things that sticks out to me about the NAL in this season. You know, you've got the Omaha Beef, who just won a championship and have gone undefeated for 2 years straight. You've got Columbus, who's basically been undefeated for the last 2 years straight and won 2 championships in 2 different leagues as well. And then on top of that, you've got Wheeling, who won an AAL2 championship last season as well. So a lot of top-heavy teams there, and we can definitely be we could be seeing some very interesting playoff competitions as things go down in this season. But the next big piece of information for me, and I guess this is probably a little bit due to my bias for Carolina, but they've got a little bit of a quarterback competition on their hands. They brought in Vincent Espinoza, who was previously with Tucson in the IFL, spent some time in the TAO this past season as well. Excuse me. And then also Dom Schaffner, a local quarterback out of one of the Carolina colleges that'll be competing for their quarterback position. What are your thoughts on Espinoza making the jump to the NAL, and how do you think he will do?
I mean, he's been around the IFL for a little bit, and I think he had a couple of stints with who did he play with in the CIF? Was it Sioux City or
he was with Billings for a while there in 2022. I want to say there was another team there, but I could be wrong.
Because I remember he was signed with the Tulsa Oilers for a little bit, and then he either came from Billings or went to Billings or something like that after they got Andre Sale or something like that. Yeah, there's a whole timeline about it, but I like the idea. Again, if they're getting rid of Ironman and kind of doing a hybrid arena indoor rules style thing, I think it can benefit them. I mean, anytime someone's able to have a quarterback competition or even just be the full-blown starter, any reps that you can get into any indoor league is only going to benefit you for learning how to play the game. So I know he's been around for a while, so it's not like I'm calling him a rookie, but like I said, any starting reps that you can get is only going to hopefully better your game.
Yeah, I completely agree here, and I think that he's a very mobile guy. I think he's probably like a 4-4, 4-3 guy, honestly. I think this style of play suits him very well, and I think in Carolina he's going to get an opportunity to ultimately be the guy. He has to prove it still, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes. We got a compliment here for both of you, your shows, I guess you could say. So the best arena football YouTubers are you, In the Alley, this show, and Off the Wall. So yeah, definitely agree. In the Alley is up there. Off the Wall is great. They do a lot of great interviews. Like Cody said, he's got some amazing coverage. And I swear I'm going to get him on the show at some point. We've talked about it multiple times. It just hasn't happened yet. And indoor, he says. We appreciate the compliment, C-Dog. Cody in particular does a lot of research for all of his videos. I just kind of fly by the seat of my pants. So definitely appreciate him coming on with all of his research every year, every week. I apologize. But moving on to, the Arena League. The big news out of the Arena League most recently is that, is it Eau-Claire?
That's how I pronounce it. I've heard it pronounced Eau Claire, something like that. I don't have a Wisconsin northern Midwest accent, so I can't pronounce it like that.
Tina Myers, I believe that's Guy Myers' wife. It says Cody is
I believe that's their mother.
Mother.
Yeah,
Sorry.
DJ and Guy's mother. Yeah.
I apologize. Miss Myers. Did not mean to call you your son's wife. That's incredibly weird. So yeah, Eau-Claire has a new head coach, and it happens to be a friend of the channel. Tay Brooks is their new head coach. He's kind of a local guy out there in Wisconsin. Super excited for him to get the opportunity to be a head coach. and I'm super excited to see what he puts together there. Full disclosure, he was not originally looking at the Arena League for options, and then after a couple conversations between me and him, he decided that he was going to drop his name in the hat and see what happened. And next thing we know, he's hired as the head coach. He had some potential IFL opportunities that he talked to some teams about, but nothing came to fruition. But I believe he's only 26 or 27 years old, and he's getting his first shot to be a head coach at the arena football level. Super excited about him. What are your thoughts real quick on Tay Brooks, former Green Bay Blizzards special teams coach?
I don't necessarily have an opinion, but local connections and everything like that really bode well. And I think that's just kind of what the TAL goes for. They want local people. They want, local communities to show up, and they really want to do grassroots kind of thing. You see that with the cities that they're put in, players that they try to sign through, and everything along those lines. So having him as a head coach, I think is good. Now, yeah, the age and the inexperience is one thing, but like I just said, with someone like Vincent Espinoza, you got to earn your lumps. You've got to learn at some point. So whether you're just throwing yourself into the fire, go for it. If it works out, then it works out. It's a great hiring. If it doesn't work out, you learn somewhere else, or it just wasn't a good experience. So kudos to them. So we'll see what they can do when it comes to 2025.
I personally think he's going to find a lot of success. I remember talking to Tay Brooks almost 4 years ago now about how he was going to be the youngest head coach in the IFL, and it didn't happen in the IFL yet, but hopefully here soon. Hopefully what he does in the TAL kind of garners some recognition in the IFL. I know a lot of teams kind of shied away from hiring him because he is so young, but this is a guy who's been a defensive coordinator for a couple seasons now. He's been a special teams coordinator. He's coached defensive backs, and he was prepared to coach offense this season as well, if that's what it took. So it'll be very interesting to see what he can build there out in Eau Claire. And, I think a lot of the players that he brings in are going to be very impressive. That's one of the big things that I think he does extremely well is recruiting. If you're a Green Bay Blizzard fan, you look back at some of those teams they had when he was there. Steve Newbold was one of the guys that he brought in. A couple other guys that I'm blanking at the moment, but guys that were very talented and, produced quite well for Green Bay, could end up, landing in the TAL for 2025. It just depends on what they decide to do. But moving on to the AF1, the final segment of the show today, there's now 3 expansion teams that are official. It sounds like there's another one coming in Arizona, but we've got Mexico, Stockton, and Wilkes-Barre that are official. So on the surface, what are your thoughts about those 3 towns in particular? And obviously the logistics issues that pop up with the team in Mexico.
So I've seen a lot, not necessarily concerned, but I've seen along the lines of what does the AF1 want to be? Now, putting teams in Stockton and Wilkes-Barre and stuff like that, and even in Mexico, those minus Mexico, those are two cities that were former Arena Football 2 cities. Now, we are not, and nor will we ever be at the heights of the AFL from the mid-2000s. So I do like the idea of putting teams in these cities where they are the most likely main draw during that season. As for Mexico, I do not mind it. I truly do not mind putting a team in Mexico. But the question then becomes is how many teams are traveling there and how many players are you going to be able to recruit down there, whether you get players from the Mexican football leagues or whether or not you try and recruit players from, hey, you're in, I don't know, Billings, Montana. Come on down to Mexico or whatever. Like, you're going to deal with a lot of passports, a lot of passport issues, I'm sure, and anything and everything along those lines. So I don't mind it. They've done it in the NAL before. I believe it's the same owner from the NAL team as well. So I don't mind it. It's just they were only around for a season. I don't know if it's going to work out again. And everyone was always concerned about how quickly the AF1 has expanded from 16 teams to start last year down to 8 to finish. And now you're trying to go back up to 12 now or 11, 12 on deck. So I don't mind Stockton or Wilkes-Barre. I don't mind Mexico. It's just, yeah, there's going to be a lot of concerns because you're going to get a lot of I told you so's if things like this do not work out.
Yeah, that's my main concern. I mean, if you're looking at on surface what's going down with the AF1, you have to like what you've seen in terms of the leadership and moving away from outside companies that have oversight on the league. But you have to have some level of concern. Obviously, you add a team like Mexico, the travel costs go up. The logistics, like you said, with the passports and potential passport issues is another thing. Does that change the way you recruit players? I personally think it would. Some coaches probably won't look at it like that, and they'll figure out the problems as they arise. But, if you all of a sudden have a team where 3, 4, 5 guys can't travel because they don't have passports, that's dramatically affecting your team because you only have a 24-man roster, including 3 inactives. So, what you do you travel down there with 19 guys and try to play, a 60-minute football game with only, 19 players? That's tough. So that's something that it definitely concerns me a little bit about the addition of them. But overall, I like a lot of what they're doing in the league in terms of bringing in teams. Like you said, I like the fact that they brought back Stockton and Wilkes-Barre team and Mexico as well. All 3 of these cities have had an arena football team at one point or another, and now they get one back, in the AF1. So we'll see if the fan bases are still there. I personally think Monterrey, Mexico is going to be one of the best supported teams in the league, just based on how much support the LFA gets. But, it remains to be seen exactly how things go. Yeah. Sorry about that. My son just decided to come join me. But yeah, one other team that we've heard that could be joining the league, and I'm hearing is actually already recruiting players, and that's the Arizona Bandits. This is kind of a unique scenario in where I'm hearing that Arizona has been reaching out via their team pages, which is normally not the case for something like that. But this could be a scenario where they haven't yet named their head coach publicly, and they haven't yet joined the league. So they're kind of moving a little bit different than most teams would. But what are your thoughts on the potential of another Arizona arena football team?
I've already stated it multiple times. I'm not a fan. Now, if you want to try and get your foothold in there and say, hey, we're going to play arena rules for the people that like the Nets, nostalgia for nostalgia's sake, I understand. If you're going to put a team in Arizona and you have the ownership and you're willing to sink the money into it, go for it. If you're willing to recruit the players and pay them, or you're trying to steal players away from the 3 teams in the indoor football league to say, hey, we're going to pay you more money than any of those teams will, good luck. I mean, the 2 of those Arizona teams in the indoor football league, I'm sure probably have some deep pockets when it comes to paying players. So I'm curious to see how it goes. Now, it's not me trying to poo-poo this. That's what it's going to come across. And while I am negative towards it, if it works, it works. I don't know the players that they're truly recruiting, but like I said, if they're willing to put their money where their mouth is and say, hey, we've got nets, we're going to do this. If you don't like the indoor style game, we've got a new alternative for you. Go for it. Personally, it's not my cup of tea. I don't like that they are infringing and something like that, but is it truly infringement if it's something completely different? I don't know. But like I said, personally, I'm not a fan. Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a sentiment that a lot of fans share. I mean, there's states that don't even have one team, and we're putting a 4th team in Arizona. I know Arizona is not exactly a small state by any stretch, but you have 3 IFL teams. Do we really need an AF1 team there as well? I personally think it's a little bit of a saturated market, and there's a lot of competition there. So best of luck trying to figure out exactly how you're going to make that work. There was some immediate speculation when all these moves came down in the IFL with the quarterbacks that maybe we see Dalton Sneed there. He's an Arizona guy. Maybe he got offered more money to go join the Bandits than he got in, Arizona with the Rattlers. That would be an incredibly courageous move for an expansion team in their first season, especially given that I had heard that some ownership had backed out of the Bandits and joined Nashville, actually. So, I'm very curious to see exactly what happens with the Bandits. I don't know for sure that this is actually the team and its personnel department reaching out, or if this is the potential for a scam. So that's something that you kind of have to look at too, and make sure you're actually getting contacted by the actual team. Vet everybody who's contacting you if you're a player. Try and do your research on anywhere you might sign for that purpose. Never want to see a player in a bad position. Couple more pieces of information that have come out. Haran O'Neal has decided to stay in Salina. He actually announced that here on the channel. He has brought in LaRoche Jackson and Matt Wells as his defensive coordinator, and then offensive line and defensive line coach in particular. He also brought over Brandon Davis from the Billings Outlaws as his director of player personnel. What are your thoughts on an IFL Hall of Fame coach retained by the AF1 when there were some openings in the IFL?
I like it. I know that we had talks in, like private chats and stuff like that, whether he would go to the indoor football league with the openings, whether in Fishers or when we're talking Northern Arizona or things like that. It's nice to see him stay. It also bodes well to the consistency of what the AF1 wants to get down to. You look at a league like the indoor football league where you're able to retain these coaches, retain some of these players, and have consistency. And I think for the AF1, that's what they want to get to. And having O'Neal stay in Salina, there was that one Facebook post where he was thanking Salina, and it seemed like he was leaving or like wasn't coming back. So it's nice to have him come back. It's nice to have him sign this coaching staff and be like, hey, we are in it. Salina's been around for quite a while. You have to go all the way back to, I know the Liberty are a different team than the Salina Bombers, but like Salina has had a team for quite a while now. They've been really consistent when it comes to indoor and arena football. So being able to have this consistency, I think bodes well for the city and bodes well for the community, because living here in Kansas, I know I'm hours away from Salina, but it is not a big town. It is not a big community compared to where I'm at here in the Kansas City metro area. So being able to have that consistency and bring players and fans and everyone in. So I think it's really good for Salina.
That's exactly my thoughts. I mean, anytime you can get a Hall of Fame coach in there and then retain him for the long term, that's good for the team, because obviously he can build on what he's built the past couple seasons. Plus, he's developed a fan base there, in Salina for himself. A lot of fans are huge fans of him, and how couldn't you be? I mean, he's a great guy, very humble. Honestly, one of my favorite coaches to talk to and deal with, and I've done 3 different interviews at this point in 3 separate years with him, and I'm hoping we can continue that trend in the next season. I like the staff he built, a lot of experience there, and ultimately I think that this is a good move for Salina. Anytime you can retain a big name coach like that, it's good for the league as well. We haven't seen too much coaching turnover from the AF1, which is always a good sign, especially considering there were some IFL openings that could have been filled by AF1 coaches. So that's always a factor to keep in mind. Final piece of information here, and we kind of already touched on this because of the IFL side of things, but Drew Powell is out in Orlando, which could potentially open the door for Kelly Bryant to be the starter for Orlando in 2025, or maybe they chase after another big name, Dalton Snead perhaps, Daquan Neal maybe. I know those are kind of, just names that we happen to talk about today, but what are your thoughts about the potential of Kelly Bryant returning to being a starter in indoor football?
I don't personally have an opinion on Kelly Bryant because I've never actually seen him play. So I can't say that. I will say on the Orlando side of things, I'm completely content. I mean, look at what they've done with Drew Powell. Last year they had Jonathan Bain before he got hurt. Is that right, or was that the year before?
I think that was the year before. Bain was with West Texas last year.
Okay, that's right. Yeah. So I think Orlando will figure things out. They've normally been pretty good with what they do roster wise. I'll be honest, I don't
personally have an opinion. I know Kelly Bryant just from college football, being the Clemson and Missouri quarterback, and he was pretty good in college if you're able to play Power 5, but Power 4. But at the same time, like I said, it doesn't translate to anything if you can't translate it to the indoor game. So if he's doing well, then more power to him. I wish him all the best because, as I've said multiple times, more reps you get in the indoor game, the better you become.
I think this is an interesting move in my particular case. I don't know that it was necessarily Orlando's decision to make to let Drew Powell walk away. Maybe it was. Maybe behind the scenes they didn't want him back, knowing that they had Kelly Bryant right there. For anybody who's watching who isn't aware of it, this is not Kelly Bryant's first forte into indoor football either. So it's not like they're turning the ball over to a rookie. He played in the Fan Control Football League a couple years ago, so he has a little bit of experience there. Had some success and made it to the XFL, won a championship with Arlington in 2023. So, I mean, he's definitely got some experience. He's not not an inexperienced quarterback, but he is kind of a dual threat guy, which is not really normally the type of quarterbacks that are chased after in the AF1, AFL. Normally you're looking for a pocket passer who can run when absolutely needed, but due to that 5-man box, it's not really predicated on the quarterback run game. So I'll be curious to see how they approach that. But ultimately, I think if you can turn the ball over to Kelly Bryant, that's not the worst thing in the world. You already had an ingrained quarterback there who learned the system last season. So now it's just a matter of seeing how he does moving forward. But
it could be something with money too. I mean, I know AF1 is doing kind of pay cuts. I don't know if they're paying the 1,000 per game. I thought they dropped down to like 450 or 500 or something like that for this upcoming season. You might know more about that than I do. So maybe it's something where Drew Powell was like, hey, if I'm only going to be making this much, maybe I'm getting more money under the table at Arizona, or whatever happened with Arizona. Dalton Snead, we'll never know. But like you mentioned, if it's a dual threat quarterback like Drew Powell, and then he's gone, well, Kelly Bryant kind of fits that mold. I mean, is it a downgrade? I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's kind of the question at hand, right? Is it a downgrade? Do they keep the status quo? I think Orlando wasn't necessarily happy with how their season went last year. They were not one of the 6 playoff teams by the end of the year. So, I mean, obviously there's room for improvement there. I think Kelly Bryant's a great quarterback, and I think he's somebody that they can definitely hand the reins to the offense over and feel confident. Although I'm very curious to see who they bring in as a backup. Obviously, you want some competition there for Bryant. You don't want to just hand him the job. But, given that he's more of a dual threat, I expect some RPO quarterback run stuff in their offense to see how things go. You're correct. The AF1 on the surface dropped their pay down to 400. At least that's what reports have been per game. But I believe it's kind of same type of wink, wink, nudge, nudge that the IFL's got going on. Hey, you're only making $400 a game, but really, here's some cash. So we'll see how things go. I'm not really sure what to think here. Maybe it was a situation where Orlando came out of last season. They lost a lot of money because of the way the league went, and they ultimately decided, hey, we can't spend the money to have 2 high-priced quarterbacks on the roster, and we have to pick one. I know Drew Powell ruffled some feathers when he joined the AF1 last year because he originally signed contracts with 2 different teams. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. He signed with Oregon and Orlando, and basically Oregon was like, oh, you're going to act like that? Kick rocks. You can play in Orlando this season. So that was kind of an odd situation, I thought, but we'll see how things go for Drew Powell in 2025. And, if Kelly Bryant is the guy for Orlando moving forward, definitely not a bad guy to turn the ball over to. But before we get out of here, any final thoughts? I know you've got some big, gone but not forgotten videos coming up. So what's the next one?
I can unmute my mic. Right now, I'm working on the Spokane Shock and Spokane Empire. I know there's documentaries and stuff like that on YouTube people can watch, so mine will be the best. No, I was kidding. I'm working on that one right now. I have gotten to the ill-fated 2022 season where there was no lease agreement. So I'm working on the final parts of that. Then I got to narrate, put all the graphics, edit, and all of that stuff. So hopefully looking at a mid-October release for that. And then it's just kind of up in the air what I want to do for November and December. There's a couple of teams that I have ideas for, but we'll just see what goes on. I'm focused mainly on the Spokane Shock, Spokane Empire.
Absolutely. Super excited to see that one. If you have not checked it out, go check out his Screaming Eagles documentary. Really liked that one. Fairly short as well. So it's not like you're sitting there for, 3-hour movie. It was like 17 minutes long, if I can remember correctly.
Yeah, it's somewhere around 15 to 20 minutes. The Spokane one will be a little bit longer because they were around for more than one season. But the thing with Salt Lake was there was a lot of turmoil in that one season. Spokane, there's a lot of winning. So you gotta talk about a dynasty over there. And players, coaches, everything that contributed to Spokane, and then just up and left one day after they I think after they lost the indoor football championship to Sioux Falls, they just up and left one day, or maybe the next season. I'd have to go back and look at it. I'm pretty sure. And yeah, a whole host of issues after post 2020 and stuff like that. So it'll all come out probably around mid-October and everything like that. The people in the Pacific Northwest, way more than I do. I'd love to hear any sort of contributions or stories or things like that. It's a fun thing. I love the Spokane Shock and Empire, and the fan base in the Pacific Northwest is always rabid, always passionate. And I really wish that Spokane or Tri-Cities or anyone like that would have another team. I know the Washington Wolfpack is up there. But yeah, Spokane deserves a team.
I would agree. Washington's had a long history in indoor and arena football, and it's awesome to see the Wolfpack there and the way that they're kind of cultivating that fan base up there. But I think that's a huge state, and it's a large market that you could definitely support a second team, and I don't think they would really step on each other's toes too much. But I'm not a team owner, so it's probably a good thing. As far as Shady Sports, we've got a couple things coming up, and the one big thing that I kind of wanted to talk about today is we will actually be streaming our first arena football game here on Shady Sports Network later on today. The Midwest Arena Football League is one of our partners, our friends, and they have agreed to be live streaming all of their games here on Shady Sports Network this season. So we're going to do a test game for their second preseason week today at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. The link is already up on our YouTube channel. So if you're watching this right now, make sure you hop over there, subscribe, and catch the game later on today. Let us know how we do. We're completely open to suggestions in terms of, how we're going to do the game stream moving forward, things you would like to see, improvements we can make as the season goes. This is our first year ever doing something quite like this, so I'll take all the input I can get. Make sure you go subscribe to In the Alley as well. Like I said, he just came out with that Screaming Eagles documentary, great documentary. You want to check that out, and then also turn on those notifications so you see the next one coming out as well. We had over 100 viewers on today's episode. So something we're doing here is working well. We really appreciate all you guys tuning in. If you haven't done so yet, wherever you're watching, hit the like button, comment, share this, retweet it, whatever you need to do. We really appreciate everybody who tuned in, and we really appreciate all the support moving forward. Thank you to everybody. Thank you to Cody. Thank you to TJ as well. I know he had to get out of here, but hopefully you guys enjoy a great Saturday of football and some great NFL games next week. And then we'll see what we can't do for another episode coming up very soon. Tentatively, it's going to be another month before we're back. But if we get a lot of news, maybe we kind of move that deadline up. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Two things. One, if you want to go see indoor football updates for the indoor football league and stuff, I do periodically about a weekly or bi-weekly updates when it comes to coaching changes, player signings, anything like that. So I kind of try and keep the indoor football league updated over on my channel. So go check those out because I've got a couple of those posted on who's been signed, who's been released, coaches going which way. I'm sure I'll have another one out by next week. Number 2, go Royals, beat the Yankees.
Love it. Love it. On that note, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Hope you guys thoroughly enjoyed this one. It seemed like you did. We had a pretty solid viewership number. But let us know. Let us know what you want to see in the next episode. Let us know what you want to see in this game tonight. And definitely looking forward to the next episode. Love you guys.
I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer. I'm a game changer.